Betrayed by the person I trusted most, my grandmother's lies almost ruined me completely. Could you survive this? The knock on my door wasn't a polite tap, it was a thunderous pounding, the kind that rattles the frame and shoots adrenaline straight into your bloodstream. I froze, halfway through sipping lukewarm coffee, my chest tightening as if my body already knew what my brain didn't. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there, hands resting on their belts, faces stone hard. "Are you named?" the taller one asked. "Yes, what's going on?" My voice cracked. "We have a warrant to search your property, step aside." It felt like my entire apartment shrunk around me. My stomach dropped, my knees almost buckled. I stumbled backward as they pushed past me, pulling on gloves, already barking orders into radios. "Wait, what? The warrant? For what? I haven't done anything." The shorter officer fixed me with a cold, practiced stare. "We received credible evidence of fraud and forgery tied directly to your name. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Fraud? Forgery?" My pulse was pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. "That's impossible. There has to be a mistake." But then I saw it. One of the officers pulled a manila envelope from his bag, slid photos and documents onto my kitchen table as if laying out my guilt like a buffet. Bank statements with my name. Signatures that looked eerily like mine. Receipts from accounts I didn't own. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt poisonous. "This isn't real," I whispered, gripping the edge of the table to stop from collapsing. "I didn't sign any of this. I swear to God, I didn't." The taller officer raised an eyebrow. "Funny, the handwriting expert disagrees, and the bank traced the trail right back here." My chest squeezed so tightly I thought I was having a heart attack. I shook my head violently. No, someone set me up. This isn't mine. It's not mine." And then, like a knife sliding between my ribs, the officer said the name. "The complaint was filed by your grandmother, Avery, correct?" The world tilted. My vision tunneled, black creeping in at the edges. "What?" My voice was a strangled gasp. "Your grandmother submitted these documents as evidence. She claims you've been exploiting her finances. She says she's the victim." I staggered backward until my back hit the wall. My grandmother. My Avery. The woman who baked me birthday cakes, who told me I was her brightest star, who swore she'd always protect me. She was the one accusing me. She was the one who gave them this nightmare. The room spun. My heart hammered against my ribs. My throat burned. Betrayal didn't just sting, it hollowed me out in an instant, left me shaking and weightless, like my very body didn't belong to me anymore. "This has to be a mistake," I croaked. "A sick misunderstanding. She couldn't. But the evidence on the table stayed back like a sneering ghost. Every signature curved exactly like mine. Every transfer routed through my supposed accounts. The precision was terrifying. "Ma'am, I suggest you stop talking and call an attorney," the officer said flatly. Tears stung my eyes. My hand shook so violently that when I reached for my phone, I nearly dropped it. My grandmother's face swam in my mind, her warm smile, her carefully pressed blouses, her steady hands pouring tea. And now, the same woman had built a new set of paperwork and slipped it neatly around my neck. The officers tore through my apartment, opening drawers, bagging my laptop, my notebooks, even the pens on my desk. Each item sealed into evidence bags felt like another nail in my coffin. I wanted to scream, to throw myself on the floor and demand someone believe me, but my voice was locked behind the storm in my chest. And then came the dagger. As they were packing up, the taller officer muttered almost casually, with the strength of her testimony, "This could easily go to trial. Prison time is very likely." Prison. For something I didn't do. Because of her. My knees gave out. I dropped to the floor, clutching my head, sobbing so violently my ribs ached. And in that moment, through the haze of tears and terror, one thought seared through me like fire. Why would she do this to me? The officers' radios crackled. They were calling in transport. And as the cuffs clicked around my wrists, cold and final, I heard my grandmother's voice in my head as clear as if she were in the room, calm, calculated, rehearsed. She'll never see it coming. If anyone had told me years ago that my grandmother, Avery, would one day handpick evidence to destroy my life, I would have laughed in their face. To me, she wasn't just a grandmother, she was my anchor, my confidante, the one person who seemed unshakable when everything else in my life cracked apart. Growing up, Avery was the one who stepped in when my parents were drowning in their own chaos. She'd pack me school lunches, fold my laundry with lavender-scented detergent, and whisper, "Don't worry, sweetheart, you've got me." I clung to her words like a lifeline. She had a way of making me feel chosen, as though I was her secret favourite. But looking back now, with the clarity that only betrayal can sharpen, I see the cracks. There was the time she misplaced my college application forms and shrugged it off with a sly smile. The time she told me, "You're just like your father, careless with money," even though I was working 2 jobs to stay afloat. And the way she kept meticulous folders on everything, family birthdays, medical records, even notes on who owed her favours. At the time, I brushed it off as her being organised. Now, it feels like a sinister catalogue she was building for years. Still, I ignored the warnings. Because when you're raised to believe someone loves you unconditionally, you explain away the shadows. When I was 25 and on the verge of losing my first apartment, she was the one who offered to co-sign the lease. "You need stability," she told me, resting her hand on mine. "I'll make sure you're taken care of." I remember crying from gratitude, never questioning why she insisted on keeping a copy of every document we signed together. Then there were the smaller manipulations, the casual digs she slipped into conversation. "You really shouldn't trust people so easily," she'd say with a knowing smirk. "You're too naive. Someday, that'll be your downfall." I thought she was teasing, maybe trying to toughen me up. But now, it sounds like foreshadowing. Other family members had their suspicions about her, though they never said it outright. My aunt once pulled me aside at Thanksgiving and whispered, "Just be careful with your grandmother. She's got a way of turning things." But when I pressed her, she just shook her head and changed the subject. My best friend, Melissa, didn't trust her either. She watches you like a hawk, she told me once after visiting. It's not normal, it's like she's collecting data on you. I laughed it off. That's just how she is. She's detail-oriented. But Melissa didn't laugh. Detail-oriented or controlling? It's strange how people can see things you refuse to. I was blind, too wrapped up in the comfort of Avery's approval. The build-up to the explosion started small. A letter from the bank addressed to me, but for an account I didn't recognize. I thought it was a clerical error. Then a debt collection call about a loan I'd never taken. I spent hours on hold trying to clear it up, each time being told, "Our records show this is yours." I started doubting myself. Did I accidentally sign something? Did I forget? The gaslighting was subtle but relentless, and I didn't even know she was behind it yet. Then came the night that should have made everything click. I was visiting her house, and as I passed by her study, I saw papers spread across her desk, my name scrolled on forms I didn't remember signing. When I asked her about them, she smiled thinly and said, "Oh, just some old documents. You worry too much." She slid the papers into a drawer before I could look closer. And I let it go. Because I trusted her. The tension only grew when she began dropping strange comments, almost like rehearsed lines. People will always turn on you if you give them the chance. Family is the only one who knows the truth about you. Sometimes you have to protect yourself, even from the people you love. At the time, I thought she was talking about herself, maybe about her own childhood wounds. Now I realized she was priming me for what was coming. The real breaking point came when I received an official-looking letter in the mail, claiming I was under investigation for suspicious activity. I remember sitting on the floor with the letter in my hands, my heart racing, my vision blurring. That was the moment I couldn't ignore it anymore. I grabbed my phone, shaking, and dialed Avery. She answered with her usual calm voice, but when I told her what I'd received, she didn't sound surprised. Instead, she said one chilling line that still echoes in my head. "Well, maybe now you'll finally learn." And that's when the first cracks of the truth began to split wide open. The truth hit like a tidal wave. It wasn't just a simple accusation, a clerical error, or even a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, meticulously constructed trap, and Avery, the grandmother I had trusted with my life, was the architect. It started with the emails. Hours after the warrant was served, I scrolled through my inbox, desperate for answers, when I found messages I didn't recognize. Each one had been sent from accounts I had never opened, linking me to financial transactions I didn't authorize. The language was clinical, professional, exactly the kind of documentation that would stand up in court. Each email carried the same signature I'd seen on the manila envelope, my own, forged, perfectly replicated. My hands shook so badly that I couldn't type a response. My phone rang, and it was Melissa. She had heard the news, and her voice was sharp, trembling with anger. "Do you know what she's done? Your grandmother, she set you up, didn't she?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My chest ached, my stomach nodded, and my mind felt fractured. "Yes," I finally whispered. She did it. Every piece it's her." Melissa gasped. "We need proof. You can't let her get away with this." But proof was everywhere and nowhere. Avery had thought of everything. Paper trails, witnesses who trusted her implicitly, financial institutions that had no reason to doubt the authenticity of her submissions. And the most cruel twist? Everyone who could have defended me, from family, friends to distant relatives, instinctively believed her. Avery had spent decades building credibility, and now she wielded it like a weapon. The investigators uncovered her methods slowly but mercilessly. Avery had forged my signature on loan documents, created false invoices, and even manipulated bank accounts she supposedly had no access to. She'd meticulously recorded conversations, some altered, to prove my alleged malfeasance. Each revelation made my head spin, my sense of reality splintering further. When my own lawyer finally sat me down, his face grim, he said the words that made my stomach drop to the floor. "This isn't just fraud. It's premeditated. She's gone to extraordinary lengths to make this airtight. If we don't catch every single piece, she could ruin your life completely." I stared at him in disbelief. "How? Why my grandmother?" He shook his head. "It's the coldest kind of betrayal. People we love most are capable of unimaginable things, especially if they've spent a lifetime perfecting deception. Even worse, some people I had trusted without question had been manipulated into supporting her narrative. Cousins who had once hugged me tightly were now unsure, hesitant to believe me. Former colleagues gave statements to authorities, citing Avery's concern for her granddaughter's actions. Each call, each hesitant word, was a knife twisting in my chest. The physical toll was immediate. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Avery's face smiling calmly as I was cuffed and I cried, as the officers rifled through my life. I had panic attacks, heart palpitations, a constant nausea that no medication could touch. Every sound, every shadow, every innocent knock on the door became a potential threat. Then came the final twist. Avery had not acted alone. A distant accountant, who had handled her finances for decades, admitted to falsifying ledgers under her instruction. Even one of the bank managers confessed to being misled by the thoroughness of her documentation. The web of complicity stretched farther than I ever imagined. She had orchestrated a conspiracy not just to destroy me legally, but socially, financially, and emotionally. The data police returned with the complete investigative report. I collapsed into the chair in my living room, trembling. The pages detailed everything, every forged signature, every manipulated account, every calculated lie. The psychological impact was staggering. I felt my identity being ripped apart. Who was I, if my grandmother could create a fake version of me so convincingly? Who could I trust? Even my own reflection seemed foreign. My hands, once tools of creation, had been weaponized against me. My memory, my reputation, my safety all had been violated by the person I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head, pacing my apartment like a caged animal. The confrontation with Avery wasn't going to be gentle. It wasn't going to be subtle. She had betrayed me in the most exquisite way possible, using trust, love, and decades of influence to construct a cage made of lies. I walked into her home, my palms sweaty, stomach twisting. Avery greeted me with that same warm smile I used to adore. Her eyes, however, glimmered with a sharpness that made my skin crawl. She offered tea, as she always did, and I accepted, though my hand shook so violently that the cup rattled. "Sit down, dear," she said, calm and precise. "You look tired." Tired? I wanted to scream, throw the cup across the room, rip apart the facade she had spent years crafting. Instead, I set my jaw and met her gaze. "This ends now, Avery," I said, voice low but steady. "I know everything. Every single thing you did to me, every forged document, every manipulated account. I have proof. The investigators have proof." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, and I felt a spark of victory. Then she leaned back, exhaling slowly, as if she were settling in for a story. "You think you understand," she said softly. "But you've always been too naive to see the bigger picture." "The bigger picture?" I snapped. "You destroyed my life. You set me up for fraud. Made me the target of legal action. Turned everyone against me, and for what? Some twisted sense of control." She tilted her head, her expression eerily serene. "Control? No. Protection. People like you need guidance. I just ensured the consequences were appropriate." My fist clenched. "Appropriate? You tried to ruin me. You tried to put me in prison." "And yet," she said, voice smooth, "you're still here, still breathing, still capable. I gave you the opportunity to learn the truth about yourself." I could feel the blood drain from my face. The audacity, the delusion, it was unbearable. I lunged forward, words spilling out like poison. "You're sick. You've betrayed everything, everyone, your family. You are despicable. You made me question my own reality for months." Avery's lips tightened, just a twitch, but enough to show the steel beneath the soft veneer. I had never seen her this small, this human, yet every word she had orchestrated over the years hit me like a whip. By the time law enforcement arrived, called after my lawyer and Melissa coordinated behind the scenes, Avery's mask was already cracking. The officers moved with precision, presenting the evidence that tied her to every falsified transaction, every forged document, every manipulation. Her composure faltered as she realized this confrontation wasn't a private battle anymore, it was public, documented, undeniable. Family members arrived, some in shock, others in tears. My cousins whispered angrily, my aunt clutched her pearls, and neighbours craned their necks to watch the drama unfold. The courtroom-style exposure was brutal. Avery's calm, authoritative presence shattered under the weight of overwhelming evidence. "You did this," I yelled, tears streaming. "You used me, you lied to me. Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" Her only reply was a cold, hollow murmur, "You'll understand one day." But no one believed her anymore. The authorities detailed her actions meticulously, fraudulent accounts, coerced signatures, bribed accomplices, and carefully staged documents. Financial institutions froze her assets, and the legal consequences were immediate. She faced criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The community that once admired her recoiled in shock and disgust. Even her closest friends, those who had always vouched for her, couldn't defend her. I remember watching her escorted away, her head held high, as though she had somehow triumphed despite everything. But in reality, Avery was stripped of credibility, trust, and control, things she had spent decades cultivating. My sense of justice, however bitter and incomplete, finally surged. The confrontation left me hollow yet strangely empowered. My anger was raw, but my voice had been heard. I had faced the architect of my destruction and survived. The legal system, family, and community were witnesses to her true nature. I left her house that night shaking, physically and emotionally spent. Every step away felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Avery's consequences were real, legal, social, and financial, but the emotional aftermath, the trauma, was mine to carry. And yet, for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of clarity. The war was far from over, but I had survived the storm she had orchestrated. The weeks after Avery's exposure were surreal. The legal battles were only the beginning. The emotional fallout cut far deeper than any courtroom verdict could. Friends, family, even strangers offered advice and support, but the drama felt like a weight lodged deep in my chest, unyielding and persistent. Every morning, waking up felt like stepping into a battlefield I hadn't yet fully escaped. The first step toward recovery was acknowledging the damage. I couldn't run from the anger, the betrayal, or the grief. I let myself cry until my body shook, screamed until my voice was hoarse, and sat in silence, letting the magnitude of what had happened sink into every fibre of my being. Therapy became my lifeline. My therapist, patient and relentless in equal measure, guided me through the labyrinth of guilt and disbelief. "It wasn't your fault," she repeated, again and again, until I began to believe it. "You were a victim of manipulation, and survivors like you don't owe anyone an explanation." I learned to confront the panic attacks head on. Breathing exercises, meditation, grounding techniques, I tried everything. Some days I failed. Some days I screamed into pillars, imagining Avery facing the same helplessness I had felt. And yet, slowly, my body began to release the tension, my mind began to untangle the chaos she had created. Support came in unexpected forms. Melissa stayed by my side, meticulously helping me rebuild financial records, assisting with legal filings, and simply holding my hand when the nightmare surged. My aunt, despite her initial shock, became a protective figure, advocating for me when others doubted my account. And a small circle of friends offered quiet consistency, showing up for coffee, long walks, and endless patient listening. But some people faltered. Cousins and acquaintances who had once laughed at family jokes now avoided me, uncomfortable in the shadow of Avery's lies and my raw anger. Learning who would stay and who would leave was painful but crucial. I realized recovery was as much about choosing whom to trust as it was about healing myself. Empowerment came in the form of reclaiming control. I changed my financial accounts, strengthened passwords, and built safeguards against anyone who might try to manipulate me again. I confronted my own vulnerabilities, naivety, blind trust, and hesitation, and transformed them into vigilance, discernment, and strength. Each step, though small, felt monumental. I also started documenting my story. Journaling, recording voice memos, even writing letters I would never send became a form of therapy. I was no longer a passive victim, I was a narrator of my own life. I analysed patterns, revisited memories, and recognised the moments when Avery's manipulation had been subtle, almost invisible. By naming her tactics, I stripped them of their power. Months passed, and gradually the anxiety lessened. Sleep returned in stretches longer than an hour. Panic attacks became rare intrusions rather than constant companions. I started volunteering for advocacy groups helping victims of familial betrayal and financial exploitation. Sharing my experience helped me reclaim agency and transform trauma into purpose. The hardest but most rewarding step was forgiving not her, never her but myself. I forgave my past self for the blind trust, for the moments I ignored red flags, for the times I questioned my own reality. I understood that survival required compassion for the parts of me that had been preyed upon. Today, my life is quieter but stronger. I've rebuilt financial independence, nurtured friendships that withstand scrutiny, and embraced a cautious optimism that didn't exist before. Every time I encounter a challenge, I remind myself of the storm I survived, how I faced a grandmother's betrayal, legal threats, and social isolation, and emerged intact. The lessons are etched deeply. Trust must be earned and monitored, love can be weaponized, and resilience is forged in fire. I carry scars, yes, but they are reminders of strength, not weakness. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define me, how I rise from it does. And in the quiet moments, when I sip coffee in my own kitchen and watch the sunlight catch the dust in the air, I allow myself a small, fierce pride. I survived. I reclaimed my life. I am finally free.